One. I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, as well as my buddy Butch RosenBalm. How are you guys?
I'm full of beans as always.
He's a picking and I'm a grinning.
Welcome to Tennessee.
Oh my gosh. We're here to discuss The Void and John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. I haven't seen Prince of Darkness in a while. I watched it this week, and I gotta ask you guys a question. How badly did John Carpenter miss Tom Atkins?
Well, he managed to get his mustache into the film. They put it on James Parker.
Yeah, that would have been epic. That's all I'm going to say.
This is from the land of graduate students who are all in their mid to late 30s. Okay. I guess he missed. What would Tom have played?
The same role Jameson played, I suppose. I mean, because
yeah.
Well,
right. And notice the mustache is not. It's a little longer on this side than it is on this side, and no makeup person did anything about it. And after a couple of days of shooting, I think Carpenter realized that was the case and said, now we got to keep it that way for the whole movie. They work in just one mustache trimming. See, there are enough mirrors in the movie. Have them trimming the stack.
Well, the mirrors are part of the plot, and they become part of the plot, which is nice to see. I think that's one of the biggest differences. Again, there are differences and similarities between the two movies we're discussing with The Void and Prince of Darkness. So with Prince of Darkness, you get a radiologist who stabs him in the back, woman. And with The Void, I really like the portrayal of the doctor. I know we talked about The Void before, but it really, to me, I like the radiologist, but the doctor being a heel was more shocking to me in The Void.
Well, I mean, the radiologist is just a victim. She's a vessel, and after she gets the goop in her mouth, she doesn't have any lines, I think, for the rest of the movie, and the doctor actually is doing this on purpose. He is the agent of action. He is in The Void. He is the problem. The radiologist is just a victim.
And to me, The Void is there's two characters who we meet in the beginning of The Void who are burning a body, and and one of them mentions it's like, are you sure we can trust these people? And he's meaning everybody in the hospital. And so you sort of have that seed planted in The Void where it's like, well, who can you trust? But then you slowly start to see, well, you can't really trust too many people.
No. And when there's something just inside of someone that must be let out, and then there is a presence in the movie. And that's what I think we find out with the doctor, is that there was, some seed of evil that was brewing in him. And that night, more than any other, it just finally is emitted, and it's not pleasant for the characters who are trapped in there with him for the rest of the night, and it's monstrous, and it turns those who encounter his evil into monsters themselves, which is the worst thing of all.
Patrick and I have had some conversations about homage and ripping off. And I'm speaking for me now, so don't feel like Patrick has agreed with this. But, sometimes you look at a movie and you wonder, one person may think it's an homage, another person may think it's a ripoff. I feel like The Void is such an homage and a thank you to several John Carpenter films.
They did not just let it rip. This was more sincere than that.
Oh yeah. And I tell you something I didn't really notice until I watched The Void is how similar the basic premise, if you will, of Prince of Darkness is with Assault on Precinct 13. People stuck in somewhere, slowly being, taken by an outside force. I really, honestly, I had not even noticed that until we watched The Void.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess because we are proceeding almost from the perspective that everyone heard the podcast about The Void that we didn't do. So should we give a little background on it or something like that? Just
All right.
kind of catch people up.
Right. In The Void, what you have going on is in the beginning there's this house, and there's these men, there's some shooting, and they're burning the body, and you're not sure why. And then you meet this cop who is being contacted by dispatch, who I want to say he has a relationship with. Now, we don't see dispatch, but he says, well, he sees the guy who there was a guy who ran out of the house and ran through the woods, ran from the two other guys. So we see this guy come on the road, and that's where the cop sees him, and he doesn't arrest him. He takes him to a hospital. He's injured. So the cop's he tells dispatch, well, tell him I'm coming. The hospital he's going to is moving. It's shutting down, really. They're going to another hospital. So you have a hospital that's very short-staffed, reminiscent of Halloween 2, another John Carpenter movie, by the way.
Very reminiscent of Assault on Precinct 13.
Yep, that too. So you have two John Carpenter movies that they're reminiscing about. And they get to the hospital, and he goes, didn't no one contact you? So it's like, wait, why didn't dispatch contact them? You're sort of asking that question. And as we're going along, a lot of weird things seem to start happening. You have a nurse who's messing up a patient's eyes, but she's mutated. The nurse is mutated, and she's cut her face off, if you will. And the cop shoots her. And I take it by the cops, this was the first person he ever shot.
Always remember your first.
Yeah, go ahead if you guys want to interject.
No.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. So after that happens, the cop runs to the bathroom. He throws up because the one nurse he was in a relationship with, and they almost had a kid, but she lost the child. Was talking to him, but he ran to the bathroom. He passes out. The doctor, who's going to turn heel here in a little bit in that movie, is like, "Are you okay?" Him and the nurses are you okay? Are you okay? Now, when I first saw the elderly cop come up and goes, "I'm going to need your gun." Now, I know nothing about that standpoint of the law. I don't get why.
In the movie, this isn't while you were watching the movie. A cop didn't come up to you and ask for your gun, right? I just want
to. Right. This is all in the movie The Void, to be clear.
Not in the theater.
Right? Not in the theater. This is all in the movie The Void that I'm describing.
It's my very limited understanding of police procedure that anytime a policeman shoots someone, their weapon is taken from them and it's investigated, or at least that's how it's supposed to be done.
Okay. And they do not get a piñata. I was lied to about that.
Yes. No piñatas.
Thank you, guys. So the elderly cop, who's the more veteran cop, he takes the other cop's gun, and he says, "What a shit show!" But it's not really this cop's fault that that's really happening, in a sense. It's just he's trying to sort of grasp what's going on too, even after he threw up. And it's sort of weird what happened. The guy he brings in grabs the dog, like you sort of see him panicking around the doctor at first. And I didn't really catch that when I first watched it, but when I went back this week and watched it, I caught that when he was lying in bed, he was panicky, and the doctor was in the room. Well, he has the doctor by the throat, and he ends up killing the doctor, if you will, or at least hurting him. And they come to find out the doctor is going to get up, and he's a part of what's going on. There's these people that are dressed in and white. They have these triangle symbols, which I do believe that a certain show from Netflix copied. Um, but so there's all these people.
Glow?
What's that?
Was it Glow?
No.
What was the show? Was it
It,
581? Was it?
no, it was this
Squid Game.
Yeah, Squid
Oh
Game.
yeah, Squid Game. Yeah.
Yeah, so Squid Game sort of takes the symbols from this movie, I do believe, and yes, I'm accusing them of that. I do believe they've seen this movie, but so they there's these figures that are coming around the hospital, and they all have knives. And what you come to find out is they're a part of this cult type style of religion, if you will, if you can call it that. Um, and that's sort of what's similar to Prince of Darkness. That you do see Prince of Darkness where these homeless people they're more. But to me, I think the biggest difference is the homeless people are more being controlled, where
Yeah.
the void the void is not. The void is these people are more loyal to the cause. They're not controlled so much.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because so this doctor is lost a child himself, and this obsesses him with going into studying the occult, and he ends up building a cult around himself that nobody knows about, and the whole point is to transcend life and to get in touch with some other dimension. I think it probably starts out to maybe get the kid back or to get in touch with the kid, but it just turns into something far weirder that really is almost like the 2001 A Space Odyssey of horror, in terms of what he's trying to do in terms of transcending his human life. And he drags his former son-in-law and daughter, who's a nurse at the hospital, with him to try and transcend this dimension. The monsters are breaking out of the hospital. He's been doing all these weird experiments in the abandoned basement. And so his army that he has, and it is like Prince of Darkness in that they surround the area. His army are basically drug addicts, and in Prince of Darkness, the army are the homeless. And I have some real problems with this, watching it with 2022 eyes. And the issue I have with that is that the addicts are a little more volitional. They have chosen to go to these trap houses and get involved with all this kind of weirdness. They're compelled by an addiction, but there's a little bit of choice in there, I think. And looking at it now, I don't know if Carpenter would use the homeless that way, because to me, it's almost like he's just picking on them. It's like here's a group of people in society. I can just sort of turn them into monsters and agents of evil because they don't really matter as humans. And I'm not saying Carpenter felt that way, but that's how it feels now. It has a creepier vibe, but not in the right way.
It makes me think, kind of going back to I grew up, I remember the 80s. I was alive, and that was kind of reminiscent of the thought that, I don't know, a lot had. I mean, they were, a lot of people looked at homeless people as disposable. Like, they're addicts, they're whatever, they don't count. And there is a couple things. I see what the point you're making, but also like, what's the lady that hits her elbow and is talking to Dennis Dunn, and she's like, a friend of mine did this, and they have a pattern they're supposed to follow, like a stuck record. So is that they have some sort of mental issue.
Well, yeah, and so then there's this assumption that she just makes that all of the houseless people who are out there are schizophrenic, and it's like, no, wait, how are you drawing this conclusion? I would hope, given Carpenter's politics, that's the part of the movie he's really embarrassed by. I don't think he would do that. You know, the army in the Void, you know, they're wearing uniforms. They have clearly, they're not just possessed. I get the idea they are true believers.
Yep.
You know, and so that's a little more acceptable. But I think we have to be, you know, I think we know enough now in 2022 to not just sort of even more than we knew in 2017 when they made the Void, to not just sort of pick a group and say, oh, these aren't really humans, we'll just, you know, turn them into our army. I think you need a little more narrative behind that. I think there has to be a little more choice that's going on, so that it's not they are drug addicts, thus they are this, you know, disposable army of evil. You know, they are drug addicts, and that has led them to be victimized by this guru type figure who has pulled them into this or used their addiction against them or something. And it's not like the whole movie has to be about that, you know, but a line here or there humanizes them, because lots of people join up with bad teams and make poor choices. You know, and that's a good thing to talk about. I think, you know, how does someone willingly get involved with this? You know, one of the things that would have been interesting in the Void is if, you know, one of them's unmasked and it's, you know, it's the guy who runs the hardware store, or it's a housewife, or, you know, or a house husband, you know, just someone who we don't categorize as being a social problem, and thus could be just written off. I don't know. Maybe I'm I don't know. Maybe I'm wacky.
No, I hear what you're saying. I sort of wondered in the Void where some of the people under the mask, some of the former hospital employees that we don't see that aren't there. Like they could be, we don't know. I will say another movie that does.
That would have been his first line of or his second line of soldiers.
Yeah, I will say that the one thing I take away from The Void, and especially Prince of Darkness, is the same thing I take away from a movie called End of Days. Anybody could become evil. That evil is a choice. Like because with John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, now the homeless are more controlled, but it's showing that hey, they're susceptible to evil. We see that with the people in the church too. They're all being.
Yeah.
You see the vomit, if you know,
Yeah.
and they become evil.
No, keep going.
With the movie End of Days, I would say there's a moment where in that movie where the one character that's Schwarzenegger's partner, he sort of makes the choice to do a wrong thing and then a right thing later on, and it cost him.
Well, that
burns him alive. So if we would have seen a moment where in Prince of Darkness where maybe a homeless person does the right thing and it costs them, I think that would have been very interesting.
Yeah, you're somewhere else and you just stumble across these people just kind of staring at this church, and you kind of wonder hey Earl, I know you. What's with the, when does the movie start? You know, sort of thing. You know, we are also, and you know, I won't say, oh, I hate to get political about this, because I don't mind getting political about this. We are watching this post January 6th. And, you know, talk about a building, a sacred type building, and both a hospital and a church are sacred in their own ways, besieged. You know, these two theoretically safe places that you can go are besieged. And what is the most sacred, sacrosanct place in a secular country but the capital of the United States? And we saw, you know, humans do evil there. And so that is the context of these movies a lot.
Yeah, you know, with you guys just talking, even before Patrick just made his point, I was thinking about They Live, and the faceless police
Yeah.
that destroy the homeless people, which
It's almost like
you know,
owning for that, because he portrays the houseless in a very, sympathetic light in that movie, which he made right after. And so there's a part of me that's kind of wondering if Carpenter hit a heavier pedal on that than he normally would have, because he maybe felt guilty about how he objectified them.
well, I do know. I saw an interview with Roddy Piper on with Joe Bob Briggs, and apparently, according to Roddy Piper, John Carpenter wanted him to go around when the movie came out and talk bad about Reagan and talk bad about capitalism. Some of the points of the movie of They Live, and Roddy was like, no.
I made a monster.
He was very much on the other side, and it's.
Yeah.
It kind of comes back around. I mean, like Joel was talking about people making choices, and I'm not calling Roddy Piper evil or anything like that, but you see in him John Nada, and then you see in him the person he really is, and sometimes it's hard to argue with your wallet.
Well, yeah, I think it's more than that, though. Politically, I think that there is films are litmus tests, and they're Rorschach also. They're Rorschach tests made out of litmus paper. But you can bring to a political movie, if it's well made enough, and They Live is a very well made movie, your own baggage. So just as many, well, I can speak of conservatives as they were back in the 80s and 90s. I can't really speak about them from the neocon era forward, but pre-Fox News conservatives, I can say very definitively, saw just as much of a threat from, information sources, thinking that obey and consume and so on and so forth. They can see that movie and say, oh yeah, Carpenter's on our side, because, we see, dimensions of obeying and consuming that's being pushed by the other side of the aisle. And, I think if Carpenter had turned it around and had said, Roddy, what part of your agenda do you think this movie is speaking to? Piper would have said, well, I'm so glad you asked me that question, because I felt like you made this movie just for me. And given a completely different and conservative, 1980s conservative reading on it. And that's a sign of a good movie.
Yeah. When you can, like you said, referring to Rorschach and Litmus, when you can look at it and you're everybody, blonde, brunette, redhead, conservative, liberal, hetero, homosexual, whatever, can look at it and you see yourself. That is a great way to bring everybody into your movie. And
when I was in graduate school and directing, the guy who was in charge of us, who was a absolutely like a Picasso level artist, he genuinely was, and he is. One of the words he used the most was allusive. Not elusive, but allusive. What does this allude to? What does it suggest? And a good allusive choice lets the audience do a lot of the heavy lifting, because the audience then is bringing their own experience to what's going on. And this is something Carpenter excels at. This is why I'm pretty certain no Carpenter movie, other than maybe Starman or something, ends, every Carpenter movie ends with a very ambiguous cliffhanger. And so the storytelling process keeps going with you. What happens to the tape after Snake Plissken destroys it? What happens the night after he came home? If you don't pay attention to the sequels, if you just look at that movie as the self-contained thing it was until they made the sequel, who is it? Is it Childs, or is it McCready, or is it both?
Or is it neither?
Or neither. I think it may be neither, but that's just me. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. Did you guys know that John Carpenter, where he recruited Alice Cooper, where he talked to him, was at, I think it was one of the WrestleManias, where
Yep.
Alice Cooper was Jake the Snake's manager.
See, I was going to cheat. This is a Region 2 DVD that I specifically bought a Region Free player, DVD player for about 10 years ago because the Region 1 version of Prince of Darkness doesn't have a commentary. Well, thanks, Shout. Because I threw them both in I listened to about 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure that it was the same commentary, and it is. But yeah, he talks about, because I cannot think of the actor's name, and I won't find it fast enough. He does the mouth trumpet. And if you've seen Prince of Darkness, you know what I'm talking about. But he talks about, he asked him, well, how did you get Alice Cooper? He's like, oh yeah, he was at WrestleMania. And Alice is like, hey, I want to be in a horror movie. And he's like, well, can we use your impalement gag, which they use on Tom Bray? And that was kind of the deal.
Carpenter has some of the best commentaries I've ever heard, and then some of the worst. What is it? The Mouth of Madness one? He lets the lighting guys just yep through the whole thing. Do you remember that?
I might even argue some of those are the same commentaries, because the actor, yeah, I'm trying to find the guy's name real quick, and I won't. The other actors like asking him questions like, well, why are the ants there together, and what's going on with this supernova, and why are they coming together? And John just totally ignores all those questions. I don't think he really had an answer for it, but
because he sure talked a lot with Kurt Russell.
Oh yeah, they talk. Have you ever watched the one for Big Trouble in Little China? They don't talk almost nothing about the film. It's still fun to listen to. Don't misunderstand me, but it's like, if you're looking for in-depth, at least on Big Trouble in Little China, you're wasting your time. If you want to hear two old friends hang around and talk about old times, enjoy the heck of it. But going back to the commentary, finally Carpenter's like, well, ask the screenwriter. Well, those of you that don't know, John Carpenter is the screenwriter.
Mark Quatermass. I'm still waiting for Mark Quatermass's next movie. I think it was Herbie Fully Loaded.
But I think when we look at horror movies, when we think about some of the best horror movies made by Carpenter, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Prince of Darkness, whether it's The Thing, what's the best explanation? There is none. There is no explanation. It's the same thing with some of the best horror games, whether it's Scorn, whether it's anything else. There is no explanation. They're not trying to explain shit to you. They're just trying to entertain you and scare the hell out of you.
And it goes right back to what Patrick was saying about the ambiguous ending and being able to read into it. One of the great commentaries, or not one of the great commentaries, one of the great questions was just asked at the end of The Thing: is it Kurt Russell? Is it Childs? Is it both? Is it neither? We don't know. We'll never know. And I used to always hate movies like that when I was a kid, because it would be like, well, I want to know what happens. Well, as I get older, I realized that that's the point. That gives you, you walk away from it with that thought.
It's a gift because the storytelling and the movie continues with you.
Yes. And you get, hopefully, the story or the ending that you want. Because I always wondered, as Patrick knows, the first time I met George Romero, I asked him, what happened to Peter and Fran? And he laughed and he joked. He said they ran out of gas around Cincinnati.
Yeah. But almost a question to ask, because it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you're one of those.
They became the new host of the Today Show. No.
But I think when you look at The Void and you look at Prince of Darkness, you're right. You guys are right. The Void is a homage to a lot of Carpenter's work, not just to Prince of Darkness, but like Butch said, to Assault on Precinct 13. People who made The Void were pure John Carpenter fans, and that's great to see. And they don't do, like you guys have said, they don't do it in a rip-off way. They do it. They tell their own story. They create their own characters, and everything they do in this movie is smart. It's so, and even by the end, they do what John Carpenter did. Here's these two people in this other dimension. What next? Like, what happened to him? What's gonna happen to him? We don't know.
Yeah, I think that's with when I saw The Void, and then there was a recent movie that has Pizzagate in the title that you can find on Netflix, which is a real Carpenter homage. I mean, down to the fonts and everything else. Yeah, Carpenter has managed to become his own genre. And, and in any genre, you can do something originally or you can do something unoriginally. And in this case, it's very much an original take with The Void, but that feels like it's happening in the John Carpenter genre. And that's cool. That's a huge compliment. How many directors not only become their own genre, but deserve to be?
Yeah.
3, okay, jump to mind.
Okay.
Carpenter, Romero, and Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Oh, Hitchcock. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's true.
I'll throw another director in there though too, just for maybe two. One, Wes Craven, I think does deserve to, and the other one would be probably Val Lewton, but Val Lewton had predecessors.
Yeah.
So
I think Lewton, wasn't he more of a producer or was he actually a director?
well, he was a producer, but he did direct.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you notice, one of his predecessors was Robert Wise, who did the sound music, West Side Story. Robert Wise directed The Leopard Man.
Yeah, he did.
So, but Val Lewton produced it. So that's what I mean by Lewton had predecessors. He had people who worked under him who went on to not just direct for him, but direct their own movies.
Now, I've never seen The Leopard Man. Is there a leopard man in the movie?
If I told you that, would it spoil? It would spoil the movie.
The movie was made 70 years ago.
Okay, there is a man. Okay,
just it's a yes or no because I'm going someplace with it.
Yes, in a sense, yes.
Star Trek: The Motion Picture been better if there had been a leopard man loose on the Enterprise that they were also having to deal with the V'ger problem.
When I say there was a leopard man, now let me be clear. There was a man who was a leopard trainer. He was the leopard. They called him the Leopard Man.
My point. Still
but he did not turn into a leopard in the movie. It's a classic Val Lewton movie where it's asking you the question: is there or isn't there a leopard loose killing?
Is there a leopard loose on the Enterprise that they're also having to deal with while dealing with the V'ger problem?
Right.
Unfortunately, that would have probably made Star Trek: The Motion Picture be 3.5 hours.
God, it would have made it so much better, though.
Would it?
I got the V'ger thing, and I got a leopard loose. Chekhov, you're head of security now. You still like that? Well, I hope that helmet covers your whole body because you're going to need it. That leopard looks hungry. Don't go down the deck. Whatever you do, they've got the light shuffleboard and a leopard. And that Zen sand gazing garden is its litter box.
Maybe Elio was the Leopard Man and V'ger saved them from the Leopard Man.
Do you know the Leopard Man, the Leopard Man, the Leopard Man? Anyway.
to help Patrick with the there's this guy who runs the museum. And the museum has very ancient artifacts that include a cat and stuff. And this man is using leopard claws and stuff and cat noises to kill people, and he is the killer in The Leopard Man. That's the movie. But it's a very good movie. It's very watchable and entertaining.
It looks like Leopard Man. It sounds like you're describing this Robert Wise movie called The Leopard Man. I'm just messing with you. So the reason I mentioned The Void in the first place, beyond being a reflection both of the intellectual contribution I'm bringing to this program and my soul, is that I think we were talking about The Wicker Man and sometimes a horror movie that's not a horror movie or is something else. And this is a horror movie that when I run into people who say they're horror fans, I always, and they want to watch a movie, I say, oh, you're a horror fan, huh? So what do you want to watch? Oh, American Horror Story or something like that. And I say, oh, really? Have you seen The Void? No. Well, maybe we should watch that, you know. Well, I like horror movies. Like what? Oh, Twilight. Okay, well, that's
pretty scary.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of movies and their ending, I know a lot of people, every time they meet Carpenter, they are the screenwriter of the thing, they want to ask about, you know, who, if either, was the thing. I want to know what happens when Jameson Parker touches that mirror. In my mind, honestly, nothing happens. It's a mirror.
I agree.
But it's the great ending. Because you're like, no, you can't stop there.
Well, it's something so cosmic. When you get to that point, if you make it a literal ending, you're going to disappoint, I think, everyone in the audience. There's no way you can tackle something that big and you know, have everyone go, oh boy, that's exactly the ending I wanted. I'll tell you a funny story about Prince of Darkness. This is a true story. At the Vogue, the movie theater I worked at when I was a kid, we had a neighborhood eccentric. It's a gentleman who went by the name of Ashtar and was this enormous bearded Jerry Garcia-like figure who would wear knee-length tie-dye t-shirts and talk to mailboxes. But he would come to the Vogue and he would sit on the front row, and if there was music, he would conduct. And he was a very bright man, but I think he had some damage. But he would often say incredibly funny things, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. You never really knew. And he claimed to be the son of Satan, which I think was like the only accurate thing that he said. But because they did commercials together later. But the thing about Ashtar is he came out of the movie Prince of Darkness muttering to himself, and I said, Ashtar, what do you think of the movie? He said, oh, it's nothing like that. And then they didn't get it right at all. That was really one of the scariest things I've ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah. I just throw that out there.
John Carpenter, when I was listening to the commentary, because if we were just discussing Prince of Darkness, no offense, I wouldn't need to watch it. I've seen it enough. And he talks about, he goes, you know, so many people think Prince of Darkness is about Satan, probably not helped by Alice Cooper's song of the same name, which is about Satan. But he goes, it's not, you know, and if you pay attention to it, it's about anti-God and the son of the anti-God, I guess the anti-son, if you will. And there's more of a, I mean, you have that huge claw reaching through the mirror and Lisa Blunt reaching out, but it's more cosmic. And, you know, I'm not trying to insult the devil, but, you know, Prince of Darkness is more cosmic, much like The Void is, because The Void to me is John Carpenter and Cthulhu. It's very Cthulhu-esque. And I don't know if it's intentional or a budgetary region or something, because he did talk about how quick they had to film it and how little money they had, which seems to be a reoccurring theme with every director and every film I like.
We got to finish. Church figures out we're shooting in here, guys.
Exactly. Just put the giant arm in. I wanted a tentacle, but it's not going to be here until Tuesday.
Here's the one thing I take away from The Void and Prince of Darkness that I don't know if you guys will agree with me or not.
We don't.
Now be nice.
I love you guys both. You guys are awesome. But To me, the movies are both about, yes, where the void is about its own sense of religion. It's not necessarily about devil or the god. Both movies are sort of about love and loyalty in a weird way. Here's this doctor who loved his daughter so much he wanted her back. And he would do anything to get her back.
Yeah.
In Prince of Darkness, here's the son of Satan, if you will, the trying to get his father out of the prison it is hell, or but because he loves him and he's loyal to him. Would the doc you talk about would Jameson, the character Jameson was playing, would nothing really happen? Well, here's a woman he loves that's on the other side of that mirror. Wouldn't it have worked? We don't know. Maybe it would have. Maybe it wouldn't have. But I wonder if it probably would have, because he did love her. In that shortest span, he fell in love with her. That's one thing I take away.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the early thing in the movie is that he's about to say it.
Yeah.
And so that is in the film, and that. Yeah, for me, Prince of Darkness is very much about. But if we posit the idea that everything has an opposite, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And the mirror obviously being this kind of metaphor for the opposite or for the other thing, that we are used to seeing the same thing back. But what if we saw truly the opposite? What if that's what this entire universe is built on? And that's a truly horrifying idea. I mean, it's way beyond mirror or parallel time, where it's just a little bit skewed this way. This is truly something much more profound. To me, Satan, the word Satan, which means adversary, is so literary. It has so many stories behind it. It has so much kind of baggage to it that we bring, including mocking things like the church lady and so on and so forth. But the phrase anti-God is a really chilling couple of words to put together. And as an atheist, if I hear the word Satan, it's just mythology. I just sort of brush it off. I don't really think about it. But if I hear the phrase anti-God, suddenly, not only am I positing that there is a God, but I'm positing what on earth, or not on earth, is this opposite? What does that mean? And that's a really chilling notion. And then Son of the Anti-God, the only thing I've ever seen talk about that was Abbott and Costello Meet Son of the Anti-God, made in 1949. And that's a little known film that Carpenter doesn't really talk about. There is Abbott and Costello Meet Son of the Anti-God. Wouldn't it be great?
If the anti-God in Prince of Darkness is the reflection, and talking about Jewel, the love of the Doctor in the Void, love of Jameson and Lisa Blunt, the two of the main characters. So is the death of love, her being stuck in that dimension, is that the only way to stop anti-God?
It might be. Is the anti-Donald Pleasance unpleasance?
He's very pleasant.
He is.
But emphasize T.
But yeah, I mean, just think of all the implications behind that idea of because here's the other thing. Well, here's one of the things that makes the anti-God so special, is that the concept of God, one of the hallmarks of it is the fact that we don't live in an age of miracles. We don't live in an age of burning bushes and kind of, the Nile turning to blood and all of this stuff that we can just point to and say, yeah, that's probably God. He's not in a very good mood. That faith is required so much, and that a lot of the power of the concept of God is in his invisibility. in a practical tangible, you don't go down to the mall and see some guy in a robe with a big white beard having kids sit on his lap, and tell them what they want when they die. I mean, there is no, literal sighting of, Charlton Heston seen at 5th and Main. But so one of the implications of anti-God is that it would be a very real, very tangible thing that is definitely trying to get here and would be a massive presence, have a physical life that we would have. There would be no faith necessary at all, just terror. Wow, that's a huge notion.
I just had a thought. We did From Beyond a while back, and much like Pretorius in From Beyond, the Doctor in the Void somehow gets in touch with this extra planet or extra dimensional creature that reveals things to him that maybe makes him crazy. We don't know, because we don't know everything he knows.
Yeah.
And listening to Patrick just then, I was thinking, you rather than looking specifically at that arm in Prince of Darkness, the giant hand, it moves the anti-God into Cthulhu realm. It would have to be some sort of Cthulhu-esque type creature that is only intent on the destruction and madness of us lesser life forms. And Patrick and I used to role play a lot of games together. There's one called Call of Cthulhu, and as far as I know, it's the only role-playing game where you have a chance to go insane when you see something like Cthulhu or horrible things. And I was thinking about that when I was watching Prince of Darkness last night, and it was like, this is probably the happiest ending to a Call of Cthulhu game ever in Prince of Darkness.
Well, they defeat it pretty much.
Yeah, and they're not. Half of them are dead, but the remaining half aren't crazy.
No, they're not, and that's and that has that Quatermass quality. He called it Quatermass for a reason, because the man of science who kicks the ass of the occult. I've gone blind.
Yep,
We're back. We're good.
Okay. I see me, and then I just see 2 pulsing points of light.
There are 4 lights.
I see a light. It's a bright light.
Go towards it.
You?
We can see you, though. I'll kidding aside.
I could see both of you in here, both of you. So
yeah,
I see neither of you.
Oh, you're good though. We can see you. But anyway,
that's all, isn't it?
Isn't it? The man of science who kicks Mystical's ass.
Yeah, well, Quatermass and like 5 Million Years to Earth, and and stuff like that. The Hammer movies.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those? Quatermass the Pit is the other title of the that it goes by. They're very, I mean, he's really the first scientific occult battler there is that I know of. Besides Dr. Joyce Brothers.
But we're not supposed to talk about that after Cincinnati.
Well, she was there when the helicopter landed with Fran and Peter. My beta capsule is extremely low at this point.
What's you guys' favorite scene in both movies?
We both sighed at the same time.
No, you're probably gonna laugh. In the Void, it's the scene at the end with the couple, because they're together and they're in basically they've got a second chance not tied to this world.
Yeah.
Maybe things are going to be better. Maybe they're both dead and in the afterlife. We don't know.
Yeah.
Prince of Darkness, I can't think of the character's name, but he's the real skinny guy who doesn't believe in him, and he leaves, and he gets stabbed repeatedly by the homeless woman, And then
Tom
later
Brady.
they're looking at, huh?
No, Tom Brady's the other one.
Yeah. He shows back up and they're like, hey, it's so and so. And they're like, hey. He's going, hello, hello. And finally they all look and he's like, I've got a message for you and you're not going to like it. Prepare for death. And then his head just falls off and his body falls to pieces. There's all these bugs just running out of it.
Yeah.
And I am not doing it justice. This scene is just every time I see it, it's a gut punch, and you're just like, oh shit, we're all gonna die.
Yeah, I echoing that, there are two scenes in Prince of Darkness that I really like. And one of them is the Mona Lisa scene where the guy comes up and he sees the readout on the computer and it says, the Holy Ghost will not save you. The god plutonium will save you. Holy shit. And then, is in fact you will not be saved or something like that. And that just, there is something about that is this ancient force saying the god plutonium will not save you is really, really disturbing. Honestly, the other thing I love in Prince of Darkness is Dennis Dunn. God damn it, why isn't that man not a star? Any of Dennis Dunn's, that's the name of the guy, right? With the great 80s shirt who's always trying to mack him.
Or David.
Is it David Dunn?
I want to say it's David.
A playwright or something. David. Okay, yeah. And Kurt Russell's, he's actually the hero of Big Trouble in Little China. Kurt Russell is his pick.
But Kurt Russell doesn't know it.
Mr. Dunn. Any of his jokes, because he's really funny, and he tells jokes that are not politically correct today, but they are nonetheless just flat out funny. And somehow he gets away with it. And I'm not quite sure how, but I think it's because he's so good-natured. And the one scene where the girl comes up to him with the bruise, and he says, oh, it must be this. And she said, no, it's not that. And he said, well, I used to break out all the time when I was a kid. Doctor said it was homosexual panic. And then just keeps going. And so who knows what that, maybe he's joking, maybe he's not, but I love him either way. And he is a funny, self-effacing hero in that movie. So anything with him is terrific. I just, he's got lots of good mojo from Big Trouble in Little China. As does, is it Victor Wong?
Yes. And it is Dennis. I did look it up real quick.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's Victor Wong, Egg Shen, who, if Carpenter made this movie just because he just could not stand the thought of not working with these two guys again, I'm all for it. I'm there.
Yeah.
And they're terrific performers. And so, yeah, in The Void, my favorite scene is easily the scene where the doctor is about to operate on his daughter and he's busy cutting off his own face and talking about, the sensations that you get used to. He's so positive about these horrible things he's doing. And he makes a wonderfully credible cult leader because he's saying horrible things with complete calm, confidence, and credibility, which then, as good absurdism does, and it is an absurdist scene, makes us question what other things are authority figures telling us with calm, confident, credible, pardon me, I effervesced, calm, confident credibility that we should also see as horrific. So yeah, those are the two scenes that I like.
For The Void, I love when the mother, the pregnant woman, is evil because you aren't expecting it. You've already had one twist in the movie. Now you're getting a second, which is really good.
Yeah.
And with Prince of Darkness, Donald Pleasance in this movie, God, that man. I love how he says, he was our prisoner. It's so good. And that's my favorite scene in Prince of Darkness. There's so many scenes in Prince of Darkness, but great.
I'll tell you,
Both great.
don't put Donald Pleasance in charge of guarding anything dangerous.
Yeah. Put him in charge of some bunnies.
Yeah, it will get loose.
Well, you saw in You Only Live Twice when he was in charge of, trying to blow things up, so or capture.
Yeah. Just very briefly, and then I really am fading. The most hilarious thing in You Only Live Twice is where Bond impersonates the astronaut, and he's about to get onto the capsule, and then Blofeld sees something and stops it. And what I think is so funny is the idea of what if Bond's plan had worked?
Yeah.
I mean, Bond knows a lot about different vehicles. He didn't know jack about a space capsule, especially one that's pretty much you can screw up all the switches inside, and that thing's still going to launch because it's being controlled at in the control tower. So imagine he gets in there and they seal him in. His first thought is, okay, now what? So fortunately they never had to follow through with that. This is my random Bond thought of the night.
Butch, is there anything you want to add before we go, man?
One thing we mentioned before, and I just want to mention again, the creatures that the Doctor makes in the void down in the basement, and the one the nurse that turned into, very The Thing-esque.
Yeah.
Another Carpenter homage.
There's some of the best I've seen in a movie.
Yes. Very practical effects that do very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Void is not a high budget movie. It's very independent, in fact, and it's a really, really great film that Patrick McCray recommended. And for his beautiful, beautiful recommendation, I'll leave a link to where you can get the Dark Shadows Daybook in the description box. Guys, it has been a blast. Thank you for giving me your time as always, guys. And I'll talk to you through the weekend. Patrick, would you be good for a video Friday, a Dark Shadows video?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm way in the zone. And in fact, do you have a topic?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
What is it? Because I have a topic too.
Well, I wanted to do all of 1840 with you and Gordon.
Oh, God, that sounds great.
So I'll contact Gordon on Twitter. And Butch, Saturday, I'd like to do Joe Kidd with you, Western Joe Kidd.
I'll try to track it down. I got it somewhere.
I have it too. But for Patrick McCray, for Butch RosenBalm, I'm Jules Sains. Good night, guys, and God bless.
Night, guys.
Take care.